My name is Lowell Snow. I'm the author of Prayer Guide, a manual for leading prayer. I just want to talk to you for a few minutes about what this book is and how you can use it. The unique purpose of this book is to help you lead prayer more effectively. Let's take a look here at the table of contents. The first section is called Prayer Basics, and it is just that. It would be for a person who is new to the Christian life, or a person who just kind of wants to go back and remind themselves of the basics of prayer. Now, here's one of the things I think is unique about the book. After these foundations have been laid in Section 1, then Section 2 is a practical how-to section that takes the principles that are taught in Section 1, Part 1, and applies those principles to specific circumstances in which you might be called upon to lead or say prayer. For instance, Chapter 6 here is saying a prayer in public, sporting events, civic clubs, etc. The next chapter is saying an opening or closing prayer. Your pastor asks you to say the prayer at the end of a worship service or whatever. Saying a prayer during a worship service, such as an offertory or a benediction. There's also a chapter here on praying in times of tragedy, such as when you visit someone in a hospital room, or even a friend who has had some traumatic event in their life, and some suggestions about praying in those kinds of circumstances as well. And then the next one begins the transition toward group prayer, and it talks about leading a round-robin prayer meeting that's very familiar to Sunday school classes and that sort of thing. All right, and then the next section, Part 3, is the very heart of this book, and that is Prayer Guide Techniques. The title of the book is Prayer Guide, a manual for leading prayer. And the concept here is that you learn to become a prayer guide. In whatever circumstance that you have opportunity to lead prayer, whether it's with your children or your family at home, or a Sunday school class, or an entire congregation, that you learn the skills of guiding a group into the presence of God for an authentic conversation with Him. And so these are some techniques that I developed as a pastor over the years that work, and they're simple and practical, and there are 4 techniques here, and then a chapter on dealing with prayer requests. And then again, the next section, which is Part 4, is a practical how-to application, where it takes the principles here in Part 3 and applies them to specific circumstances. A prayer walk, if you have opportunity to do that. A short prayer time with a small group, that would be the typical Sunday school class prayer time. But anyway, specific circumstances of group prayer that you might be called upon to lead. And then the final part, Part 5, is guiding prayer and worship. And obviously this would be for those of you who are pastors or worship leaders. So let's take a look at some of these chapters and just kind of let you see how things are laid out. At the end of every chapter, there's a study guide. If you want to teach this book, there are questions, and each chapter ends with a discussion question. Here's Chapter 6 on saying a prayer in public. This is the one, civic groups, that sort of thing. And so it just kind of begins with a Bible study of that applies to that kind of prayer opportunity, and then goes through that preparation, salutation, petition, and benediction. Each chapter does this same thing. It tells you how to make suggestions about preparing for that kind of prayer, and then actually going through the prayer, what you'll want to include in the prayer. Here's the Part 3 on prayer guide techniques. And as I said, this is, I believe, the heart of this book, and the reason you need this book. One of the greatest needs in the church today in regards to prayer is that people don't know how to do group prayer. But these techniques engage people in prayer in ways that they can do. Even people who never pray out loud can be involved in a prayer meeting if you just simply know some basic techniques. Now I have an arrow here pointing out the fact that that there are cross-references throughout this book. In other words, this is an instruction about something to do, and there's more clarification on how to do that in this chapter. And so there's a reference back to another chapter, and that's all through the book. Very practical, very how-to. You can do this. Prayer Guide, a manual for leading prayer. I hope you'll give it serious consideration, and I believe it'll be a blessing to you.